I think there's a big difference in comparing someone to Hitler on the one hand, which I don't do. I think that's a big mistake. And I said that in the speech that you're referring to. That's a unique form of evil that should not ever be compared to anything. But we are not living up to our responsibility to our Constitution if we don't remain alert to warning signs that we know from history, not only from the Third Reich, but from a whole series of strongman dictators. When they start trying to tell people what to think, when they start trying to expand their power so that they push the Congress around, push the judiciary around, and try to consolidate dictatorship, the first steps on that road are ones that we should see as warning signs.
I guarantee that the side of the country that voted for Trump, they hear Nazi and they just go, oh, you're calling us Nazis? First of all, it's a bit of a false premise, as bad as they are. And also, it just says to them, well, you just hate us. And one thing I've learned in recent years is that the one thing that's more powerful than money is hate.
Bill just sat down with none other than Al Gore, yes, Clinton's longtime vice president, and let loose with some of his signature truth bombs. The unapologetic comedian didn't hold back, calling out Gore for what he sees as yet another episode of Trump derangement syndrome. And let's just say the internet had a field day. Don't forget to hit that like button and subscribe so you never miss one of these gloriously uncomfortable takedowns. Would you like it to be more serious or satirical in tone?
Already seen, by the way, how populist authoritarian leaders have used migrants as scapegoats and have fanned the fires of xenophobia to fuel their own rise to power. And power seeking is what this is all about. Our Constitution, written by our founders, is intended to protect us against a threat identical to Donald Trump.
I played that clip to set the stage for Bill Maher's verbal takedown, a moment that laid bare just how disconnected today's left has become. Despite being dealt a harsh electoral reality check, they still haven't gotten the message. After years of vilifying Trump and losing critical elections along the way, they remain fixated on casting him as the ultimate villain in their endless political drama. Just days after Maher delivered that fiery monologue, Al Gore stepped into the lion's den Maher's show armed with the same worn-out talking points. But instead of cheers, he got a jolt of reality. Maher didn't sugarcoat it, didn't let him skate by. He challenged Gore directly, calling out the left's obsession with fear-driven narratives. At some point, someone had to say it. Enough with the hysteria, try winning on real ideas for a change.
And I see and hear over and over again the assertion of complete inaccuracies that Ukraine is responsible for starting the war with Russia. There's so many of them, and they keep asserting these things, expecting us to believe that the climate crisis is a hoax invented by the Chinese, that windmills cause cancer, that coal is clean, and they try to assert with the force of power their own special version of alternative facts.
Al Gore, bless his heart, clearly missed the memo. He must have thought he was stepping onto the Bill Maher set circa 2005, the version powered by liberal applause lines and straight from the DNC talking points. But times have changed, and so has Maher's platform. Much to the dismay of the progressive echo chamber, his show is no longer a safe space for canned leftist narratives. So Gore did what any out-of-touch legacy politician might. He launched into a tired monologue packed with the usual anti-Trump tropes. Climate change panic? Check. Trump's windmills cause cancer bit? Check. And naturally, the Nazi comparison made an appearance because apparently, subtlety is a lost art. He expected Maher to nod along like a dutiful MSNBC anchor. Instead, he got a televised gut punch. Maher didn't just challenge him, but rolled his eyes into another dimension. While Gore clung to his outdated script, Maher dished out the kind of uncomfortable truths that make both sides squirm. Would you like this version made more humorous or more serious?
I guarantee that the side of the country that voted for Trump, they hear Nazi and they just go, oh, you're calling us Nazis? First of all, it's a bit of a false premise, as bad as they are. And also, it just says to them, well, you just hate us. And one thing I've learned in recent years is that the one thing that's more powerful than money is hate.
Bill Maher didn't hold back. He called out Al Gore right then and there, slicing through the usual sanctimonious noise with his trademark bluntness. Maher looked Gore dead in the eye and reminded him in no uncertain terms that the golden era of media-manufactured hysteria about Trump is long gone. The days when you could just shout fascist and win the argument, yeah, those are over. He told Gore that millions of Americans voted for Trump not because they're Nazis, not because they're fascists, but because they're fed up with the smug elitist narratives pushed by people exactly like him. Ma made it clear painting half the country as monsters isn't just dishonest, it's lazy, and worst of all, it's politically suicidal. Maher's point: you don't win hearts and minds by calling your opponents evil, you just widen the divide. If Democrats want to stay relevant, they'd better stop preaching and start listening. The same tired outrage tactics that worked in 2016 don't land anymore. People want facts, not fear, honesty, not hysteria, and Maher made sure Gore heard that loud and clear. But he wasn't done.
When people hate you so much, and when they think you hate them so much, even the money goes out the window.
Well,
not that I think Trump is going to survive if he takes the economy down, but this idea that, well, just to take a random example, you can't even break bread with them. We hate you so much that
well,
you're not even,
look, I know
deplorable and you're not worth having dinner with.
I know that you've been attacked on this, and
what?
Yeah.
This falsehood has been floating around for years, and it finally took someone like Bill Maher to cut through the noise and set the record straight. Despite what some Democrats and their media allies would have you believe, J.D. Vance has never called Donald Trump Hitler, not once. But that didn't stop the usual crowd from twisting his words, ripping them out of context, and launching yet another smear campaign in a desperate attempt to derail Trump's presidential bid. This isn't a one-off mistake, it's a pattern. Take a partial quote, strip away the context, amplify it across every outlet possible, and use it to inflame. The aim isn't to inform the public, it's to mislead, divide, and distract. Luckily, voices like Maher's, unafraid to challenge the narrative, are pushing back and forcing a much-needed reckoning with reality. So did Al Gore retreat when faced with the facts? Let's find out.
You were in the news this week for invoking Nazis.
Well, I didn't do what J.D. Vance did and call Trump America's Hitler when he did that a few years ago. I think there's a
what he actually said was, I think about Trump a lot, and he could be an asshole just like Nixon, or he could be America's Hitler.
Oh, that's accurate,
and I remember thinking, so the good option is that he's just an asshole like Nixon.
So at long last, Al Gore has walked back his comparison of Donald Trump to Hitler. It's about time. Hopefully, the rest of his allies in the Democratic Party and the left-leaning media will follow suit and finally retire that worn-out, inflammatory talking point. But let's look at what he said next. Gore warned about the dangers of a government that tells people what to think. Seriously? That's a bold statement coming from someone aligned with an administration that's practically made ideological enforcement its hallmark. From suppressing dissenting voices on social media to pushing polarizing narratives through schools, agencies, and media, the Biden administration has been relentless in shaping and enforcing what Americans are supposed to believe. Whether it's climate policy, gender identity, race discussions, or pandemic mandates, the message has been clear: fall in line or face the consequences. So yes, coming from Gore, the warning about government overreach isn't just ironic, it's laughable.
I think there's a big difference in comparing someone to Hitler on the one hand, which I don't do. I think that's a big mistake. And I said that in the speech that you're referring to. That's a unique form of evil that should not ever be compared to anything. But we are not living up to our responsibility to our Constitution if we don't remain alert to warning signs that we know from history, not only from the Third Reich, but from a whole series of strongman dictators. When they start trying to tell people what to think, when they start trying to expand their power so that they push the Congress around, push the judiciary around, and try to consolidate dictatorship, the first steps on that road are ones that we should see as warning signs.
ChatGPT said, Bill Maher didn't even spare his longtime friend Larry David when he crossed the line. When Larry jumped on the bandwagon and lazily compared Trump to Hitler, Maher didn't let it slide, not for a second. He called him out directly, telling him he'd completely lost the plot. Maher wasn't angry, he was disappointed. Because when even sharp comedic minds resort to hysterical, historically ignorant comparisons, it doesn't just diminish the debate, it trivializes real evil. Maher reminded Larry and everyone watching that calling Trump Hitler doesn't make you look insightful, it makes you look unhinged. It's the kind of lazy intellectual shortcut that alienates reasonable voters and undermines legitimate criticism. If everything is fascism, then nothing is. And if comedy loses its grounding in reality, it turns into nothing more than an echo chamber where punchlines fall flat and no one's laughing.
Larry David, because you're friends, aren't you? Were you friends? Are you friends?
Yes, of course. I mean, this wasn't, my favorite moment of our friendship, but, look, I don't want to get in too much into that, but I think the minute you play the Hitler card,
That's what I think.
you've lost the argument.
Yes.
And also, I must say, come on, man. Hitler, Nazis, nobody has been harder about and more prescient, I must say, about Donald Trump than me. I don't need to be lectured on who Donald Trump is. Just the fact that I met him in person didn't change that. And the fact that I reported honestly is not a sin either. But, to use the Hitler thing, first of all, I just think it's kind of insulting to 6 million
Yes.
dead Jews.
Al Gore, Larry David, and plenty of other Democrats still haven't learned the hard lesson that's been staring them in the face since the last election cycle. They're clinging to the same worn-out strategy that's already backfired, spinning exaggerated narratives and outright falsehoods about Donald Trump. It's political deja vu, only this time it reeks of desperation. Instead of recalibrating and reconnecting with everyday voters, they've doubled down on the hysteria, hoping that if they scream dictator loud enough, people will forget about skyrocketing inflation, a chaotic border, and the crumbling trust in major institutions. Newsflash, they won't. Demonizing Trump might win applause at elite coastal cocktail parties, but out in the real world, voters are tuning it out. They're not looking for scare tactics, they want real solutions. And as long as Democrats keep playing the same broken record, they'll keep getting the same result. Stunned expressions on election night and a sea of red on CNN's map. That wraps up today's video. If you enjoyed this commentary, hit that like button and subscribe for more sharp, no-nonsense takes. Thanks for watching. See you next time.